Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the Believe Network. And the 2024 Texans schedule is out. Joining me to take a look is our friend Steph Stradley, an OG Texans fan and a longtime Houston Chronicle contributor. Always great to see you, Steph. And how excited do you get about schedule release day? Is this like Christmas?
No, I would say the draft is a little bit more like that. I would say this is more about, okay, how's the tailgating going to be? And this is actually a pretty great tailgating schedule.
Yeah, I'm interested in all of those little stuff that the regulars like about the Texans schedule and what they're looking for. And let's take a look. We'll go right into it. Let's take a look at the schedule. The Texans get 6 nationally televised games. We're going to get into all of them. They open on the road at Indianapolis. Steph, the first primetime game, though, is Sunday at home against Caleb Williams and the Bears. It's great that you get the rookie quarterback early in the season, Steph. I think that's good.
You think so? Like sometimes you're surprised by them. Like you might have been surprised a little bit by Anthony Richardson last year. And I will also say Bears fans, I don't know necessarily travel, but there's Bears fans everywhere. So the Bears usually have a pretty good showing here unless, Texans don't sell their tickets. So that should be a very interesting game. And that tailgate will be incredible. The thing I like about it from a tailgate perspective is if you live in Houston, you are familiar with traffic. So a Sunday night game is better than a Monday night game or a Thursday night game as a Houstonian because you don't have to deal with traffic, and compete with all the people trying to get home. So Sunday night game, that's pretty slick.
Absolutely. And the Bears might be a better team this year, but rookie quarterback, a team that's trying to put themselves together, I think that's going to help to play them early. Now let's go to game 3 at the Vikings. Stroud versus another rookie quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. Then they host the Jags. Let's skip past the Jags. The next one is the Bills. That's Josh Allen versus C.J. Stroud at NRG Stadium, Steph. The Steph on Diggs revenge game. Oh, and the other thing is, here's the H-Town uniform for the Bills game. What do you think about this one?
My feeling about uniforms is you get your feelings from them by seeing how people play. And so if you're going to have a team completely geeked up to revenge or whatever, I mean, it's clearly going to be an important game in terms of the AFC if the Texans play the way that they want. So, yeah, they want to get stoked for that game. And sometimes the unusual uniforms are the ones that get people jacked up for the game.
So, yeah, you got a big one, though, at NRG. You get to see Josh Allen. I know you got to be excited about that. Allen versus Stroud. Maybe Josh Allen doesn't have as many big-time famous weapons as he usually does, but those two have had some battles already.
Definitely. That is one that you definitely circle.
All right, let's go to the next one. Game 6. Let's pull that up. It's the Patriots and C.J. Stroud facing his third rookie quarterback early in the season in Drake May. 3 rookie quarterbacks in the first 6 weeks is a good thing. Get the guys while they're figuring it out.
and these are games that you're going to have to win because the season starts getting a little bit more perilous just based on what we know now. And this is a special message to J.J. Watt. I know how much you like rookie quarterbacks. Maybe you and the Texans will work something out and feast in this early part of the season because this is feasting season and you need to feast. And we need to feast. We all need feasting, don't you think?
There you go. Yeah, you get to feast on some young guys, some young blood in the league. But the next game after that, though, this is a big one. The 20th at Green Bay, Stroud versus Jordan Love. Better to go to Green Bay in October than in November through January, Steph.
And I have a special message now to the traveling Texans. A lot of people I've been talking to have been talking about going to that specific game. And why? Because really, Lambeau Field is a great place to go. The people there really they understand the tourism that happens there. Like they have a special Hall of Fame for the Packers. Now, I went to the game when it was in December and it was snowing. And it was one of those rare snow games because even Aaron Rodgers at the time said that he had not played in many snow games and it was snowing the whole time. This game, however, the average temperatures tend to be 55 to 40 and assuming it's not raining, those are pretty great football temperatures to be at Lambeau Field. And if you're going, yeah, you can fly directly into Green Bay, but the way we did it is we flew into Chicago and drove, and it was a pretty easy drive. They're used to having a lot of people show up. So when we went there years ago, I was told by somebody there that they had never seen a fan base travel like that. And I think that this is a really good season to travel. And this is one of those games that if you are one of those fans that goes on the road, this is one to do it. I don't go very often, but this one's tempting.
Was that your favorite place to visit of all the NFL stadiums?
For the stadium and for the history, it was very special. Like if you really appreciate people who love football, and Green Bay is known for loving football. Like you cannot not love football there. And so it's kind of a nice bookend to, the first preseason game of the season is going to be, the Hall of Fame game with Andre Johnson being inducted to the Hall of Fame. And Canton is another one of those small towns that the people there love football and love hosting people that love football. That's always a good time. Now, I will mention with that, that means that the Texans have to play early and extra in the preseason. So hopefully they can make it to that bye week that we're going to get to.
All right. Yeah. The other part about it is with Green Bay, I was dating a cheesehead. There's not a better fan base. I mean, really good people, Wisconsin people, good people.
I had such a fun time. We had a meetup at a brewery while we were watching the game. Somebody goes, "Do you like coffee brews?" Like, yeah. And so he came back and gave us coffee brews, and it was from a coffee stout from his own brewery. Like that's the brewery that he, works at, which was really neat. Like he didn't have to do that to somebody who's visiting from out of town. And we stayed at an Airbnb. The people there were really nice. The guy shoveled the driveway at 11 p.m. So what you're saying about people being nice, they're very, very nice. And really the Packer Hall of Fame is incredible. Their gift shop is incredible. Like it's huge. And, if you go, make sure to take a tour of Lambeau Field. It's worth it. Both Lambeau Field and their Packer Hall of Fame.
Yeah. More than even dating a cheesehead, I was living with her and she had a shrine in our place where like the cheesehead on a counter and Brett Favre books that she had, his book with his signature on it and the whole thing. And we went to Texans Packers game at NRG and she had me sitting and tailgating with the cheesehead. So I got the full sort of feel of the whole thing, Steph. But
well, I have to say that what's nice about playing that whole division this season is those people are very nice and are fun to party with. Like they might not get along well with each other, but because we're kind of a neutral related to that division, they're just fun to party with. I think Canton's going to be fun because, there's two Bears being inducted. They're playing the Bears in that game early. So it's a very party kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. Game 8, we'll go back to the schedule. Texans host Indy, and we'll skip through that one because we want to get to the next primetime game. It's a short week, Thursday night at the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. And Steph, there are 3 things that I do not like about this. Number one, they got to travel for this on a short week to a Thursday game. Number 2, they'll be coming off a major division game. So that's going to be tough. Physical, those games are usually a little more physical, a little bit more emotional, all that sort of stuff. The third thing I don't like, New York in November. We saw them playing in ice last year. That's where Stroud got. I don't like any of this. I don't like any of it.
Well, I mean, there's not much to like about going to New Jersey, but what I will say just generally, like this is a stretch of like 3 primetime games in a row. This is the most primetime games that they've had in their franchise. And when you talk to players about this stuff, they're so into their schedules, into their recoveries. And primetime games have different pressures. Like they try to treat them all the same, but sometimes you just can't. The team is going to have a lot of maturity to deal with this schedule. A lot of maturity because it is going to be times where they're just going to have to do difficult things and try to stay healthy in stretches where it's going to be very difficult to stay healthy.
Yeah, it's going to be managing injuries more than they had to do last year and managing just the physical.
Wait. I will say they did manage a lot of injuries last year, and they were actually remarkable about it, like particularly on the offensive line. Did they have struggles with it at times? Yeah. Did they play much better than most teams would do under the same circumstances? Yes. I could not believe how much with a rookie quarterback, they went through all those different rookie centers. But this year is kind of interesting. I'm hoping that the Texans are trending more towards a reload team, that any guy that makes the 53-man roster is a reload guy, that if you had to push him to be a starter, he could be a starter. And now also you can stash some guys a little bit over on the practice squad too. But this is going to have to be a reload season, especially if eventually they end up going towards 18 games. All teams are going to have to really work on having schemes that make sense and have interchangeable pieces, where you're not so dependent on one guy, and then they just have to have their depth be just reload guys where they could be starters at other teams, but they're playing backup here and in particular roles.
Yeah, and I guess I mean more, I should have said it, they're going to be managing their bodies a lot because of the different times and stuff. The injuries, yeah, they had those last year. You're right, but just kind of managing themselves with all of the changes in schedule and different.
The involved with that is a lot because last year they just tee it up Sunday at noon. Actually, if you talk to coaches about that, they don't have a problem with let's tee it up at noon every Sunday. But so this has interesting aspects of it, but it's part of becoming a more mature team, and the schedule is what it is. You just line up and play.
Yeah, the price of winning. All right, next up is game 10. Let's go back to the schedule. If you look down a little bit, you'll see right after one primetime game, they got a second one. Right after the Jets one, they got the Lions, and that is Sunday night on NBC. The good news is, Steph, the Texans will have 10 days to prepare for Detroit, waiting for Jared Goff at NRG Stadium. I think that's going to be a big help for them.
And it's a Sunday game. So guess what happens when Texans get to wait until 7 p.m.-ish on a Sunday night? It is delightful, as opposed to if you're doing it on Monday night, which is, people have to work. Sunday night game, that's the game that everybody wants. And it's a great tailgating type of game. And just for you guys out there, if you've never tailgated a Houston Texans game, that's kind of the front porch of the team. And there are welcoming tailgates in just about every lot. And you're welcome to come to ours because, if you come to our tailgate, you're a member.
Ah, that's awesome. By the way, I should mention, let's throw the photo up here. The Texans will look like this against the Lions. It's battle red. The new battle red uniforms come out. So you got that. Now let's continue with the schedule because game 11, the third straight, Steph mentioned it earlier, third straight primetime game, Monday night, ESPN at Jerry World for the Cowboys. Dak Prescott for CJ Stroud. And Steph, you got to love Texans-Cowboys in primetime, and the Texans get an extra day coming off that Sunday nighter. And it doesn't sound like it's a lot because it's just Sunday afternoon to Sunday night, but to me, that's still a big deal.
Sure it is. And what's nice about that is the Texans, traveling Texans tend to roll pretty heavy into Jerry World. And because it's a Monday night game, some people might be tempted to sell their tickets because they're working all day and don't want to go to a Monday night game because Monday night games, don't fit in everybody's schedule. So for all those traveling Texans out there, I am guessing that there's going to be a lot of y'all, and I might actually be going to that game. So
I was going to ask you, how many of these road games are you going to this year?
I'm going to Canton for sure because I already have all of that set up. And if you guys are interested in going to Canton, if you look quickly at it, it's really hard to kind of schedule it. But if you look at my pinned tweet, I have all sorts of tips on how to roll into Canton and make it kind of cheaper or easier for you because Andre Johnson, you need to celebrate every victory, and he's certainly somebody to celebrate. But I'm going to go the Cowboys game, maybe the Packers game. I normally don't travel that much, but this is a schedule, and this is hopefully a special season. I mean, the football is entertaining. I like entertaining football. We deserve it.
Yeah, and this is a schedule that I was going to say it's a schedule that is a fun schedule to see some road games, and there's some really great matchups.
Well, and as everybody probably already knows, it's the projected fourth hardest schedule in the league. And schedule strength does make a difference in who goes to the playoffs because it's a parity league. And so if somebody has an easier schedule versus a harder schedule, that can make a difference. But it's not projected strength of schedule that matters. It's more actual strength of schedule. And you won't know that until after the season's done because, injuries happen. Teams that look like they are going to be good are bad. And you just never know. So, but this is definitely going to be a test. And as we mentioned earlier, because we're getting to this part of the schedule, you better have some wins in your pocket from earlier in the season because then it's just going to get harder and harder.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. And that's a big factor. I'm thinking when I looked at this schedule, but we'll get back to that. By the way, that Cowboys game, it's the first Monday night football Texans game in 5 years. Their Sunday night games are their first in 5 years too. So it's been a while since they've got to experience this. Game 12 and 13, as we look back at the schedule, go past that Cowboys game, you'll see after that, it's Titans. They're hosting the Titans. Then they're at the Jags. So a couple of big division games. They're always huge. But then they get a bye week. What do you think about a bye week that's this late in the season?
Typically, you wouldn't want it this late. But given the next games that come after it, you might need it. And then the other part of that is when you have various primetime games in the season on like Thursday night, to some degree, the teams treat that as like a mini bye. Players have different views on that, and maybe it depends on which position you play. But like some players like the short week where you're not really overthinking what you're doing and you're just strapping it on and playing again, and then having a couple extra days on the other side of that. And then some players do not like it. And I think a lot of that depends on what their physical status is at the time. So typically I would not like a bye week this late, but with this particular schedule, I would prefer to have it, if it was going to be too much on either side, I'd prefer it to be at this time versus early in the season. But like, you can't know in advance. Like if you have a key injury early in the season, you might wish to have it earlier, but you're just not. So, every team has to deal with things, and they're going to need the rest before this next stretch of games.
Yeah, I really felt like they needed the bye early last year. Young quarterback, banged up offensive line. They had some injuries. It helps. We're going to find out why they need the bye late, because the rest of the schedule, it starts to get pretty hairy. And
Yes.
Let's go back to it, because coming off the bye, we'll see it up on the screen. They host the high-flying Dolphins offense. So the good news is 2 weeks to prepare for the Dolphins. Unfortunately, the next one is rough. You got 6 days to prepare, Steph, for Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's in Kansas City, and you would hope, because of weather considerations, I've lived in Missouri for 6 years. Like I was there, you would hope that one was earlier and you weren't getting 6 days to prepare for Andy Reid and that offense, and of course the Chiefs defense too.
And didn't people like lose body parts when it was so cold during the playoff game? Like, I'm not traveling to Kansas City for that game. But if you guys are out there, hold it down for H-Town. I mean, one thing about the short week in Kansas City, what Kansas City is. You know what they're going to do. Yeah, they do some trickination, and you just have to be prepared for the whole Kansas City experience and keep your head on straight. So, I mean, at least there's that. Like, they know how to prepare for Kansas City. Everybody's seen how Kansas City plays, but, go ahead and defend that.
Yeah, and here's the other part about if you're going to Kansas City. I've been there to Arrowhead 3 times, and that is the loudest football stadium I've ever been to. I mean, if you're going up there, it's fun because that place is nuts. And I don't know, Steph, have you been to KC? Have you been to a place any louder than that if you have been there?
I have not been there, although I will say that it was a really great, like I sometimes travel on the road just watching what happens with the traveling Texans. And one time they had so many people there that they had a tailgate, and then they all walked into the stadium all together and sat in the same section generally. Like everybody just kind of talked to each other and said, hey, try to sit in this area. The Kansas City people said, we've never seen anything like this. I would like to think that when the Texans are at their best with our roof, we can get pretty loud. And the playoff game last year was pretty tremendous that way. And I was there for the J.J. Watt interception touchdown, and that actually made the concrete shake. I didn't know that was possible, but some physics guy said, yeah.
The Kansas City barbecue in their tailgate,
yeah,
it's as good as far as smells go, and as far as barbecue goes, any place outside of Houston that you're going to find, I would say it's pretty good.
Well, and I understand that the people there are very nice, and it's kind of like Green Bay in that way.
Yeah, I got family there. My mom's from Missouri, so I can definitely say that. And also, I got real lucky because I got to see Joe Montana once when the Chiefs played. He was with Kansas City at that time, and then another time that I went, it was a miserable experience as far as the weather. It was cold and raining, but the cool factor was they were playing the Raiders, and Bo Jackson was on the Raiders at that time.
Oh, wow.
And the crazy thing was the fans who had cheered Bo during baseball season because he was playing for the Royals now had to boo when he came out on the field, or the Raiders came out on the field. So they're booing I don't know if they were booing Bo, but they were booing the Raiders when they came out on the field. And, it's like the guy that you love, and then he's playing on your arch rival in football. So it's very strange. Let's go to game 16. And boy, this is the thing that I feared the most. And Steph, I'll give you a chance to reply in a sec, but just the Texans play on Wednesday, Christmas Day, not just against any team. They play the Ravens. And what I hate the most here, Steph, is this is 3 games in 10 days late in the season when you like to be healthy if you have the playoff dreams. But also, it's not just 3 games in 10 days. It's 5 days going from the Chiefs to the Ravens. Yuck.
Yes. I mean, different styles of play for sure. But yeah, that's a challenge. Like, that's why you're going to make sure that you get as many of those early games in the W column if you can. But these are the games that determine whether we're going to have home playoff games, if that's in the cards for the Texans, because the whole AFC is pretty stacked with quarterbacks, and this is going to be pretty amazing. Now, I will tell you some secret news for some of your younger listeners. I heard immediately upon knowing that it's a home game with the Ravens on Christmas. I heard from Texans Santa, and Texans Santa said that he will be there for that game. The difference between a regular Santa and Texan Santa is he's not as judgy and sometimes likes things that are naughty. So that tailgate should be fun. I will tell you, all like kind of Christmas tailgates are fun. Sometimes it's nice because people that live out of Houston come home for the holidays, and that's the game that they come to. And the Ravens fans don't really travel, so that game should be very, very Houston oriented, assuming that both teams are pretty relevant, and should be a lot of fun. So do the tailgate, try out tailgating. Like when the Texans first existed, my friend and I, we did not have a home tailgate, and it didn't take very much time before we made lots of friends. Technically speaking, I don't know if this is true or not. Like it's said that the word Texas means friend, and it's one of the most friendly, remarkable places I've ever been to. Like I've been to tailgates at other teams, and they're fine and nice. Texans tailgates are amazing and very special.
I know for you, so many of the Texans fans are like family. Do you like Christmas Day games?
It's easier now that my kids are bigger. Like it might be a little different if, I had more obligations in that way, but you kind of get used to it, and it gets kind of festive, the fans are your family. And what's amazing to me is the Texans are kind of the first franchise because of, like our strange history where we got to know each other in real life because of tailgating. That wasn't allowed in the old days. So we got to know the most avid fans, personally. But then we also were the first digital team where from the get-go, we got to know each other through message boards and then later, social media and all that. So we're very connected as a fan base, and it's fun when things are really fun.
I'm trying to remember. I believe there's been something like at least 3 games on either Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. I remember Bullock missed a field goal that helped the Texans get into the playoffs. It helped the Texans.
Yeah.
Bullock missed field goal with I think he was with the Bengals. And
yeah, so that's right.
And then there was that, I do remember just a few years ago, there was that Steelers game that nobody showed up to because the Texans were terrible. And I think the Steelers filled a lot of the stadium. Do you remember that one? Is that right?
I try to block out the ones that are not good.
It was either Christmas Day or Christmas Eve.
I like doing the Men in Black, brain eraser thing. So like, look, and then like a lot of my history with the Texans is trying to remember just the best parts and trying to forget the worst parts because, to put it all into perspective, we think of the Steelers as like this powerful franchise that won all these games and they have been a very dominant franchise. But in the very early years of the Steelers, they were terrible for a very long time. And so it's always struck me as like, how long do I have to live before the Texans can be a completely dominant team? And I hope that this is the era where that happens. I mean, I would never bet against D'Amico Ryans. He's just a brilliant person.
One more note on this Christmas Day game. It's a Netflix game, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steph, but just like all the Texans games, they'll put it on a local station for us in the Houston market. But if you're outside of the Houston market, you're going to need Netflix for that one.
Well, and the other part, just looking at the schedule generally, most of the starts are like that are regular Sunday games and not primetime games are noon starts. And a lot of the reason for that is the league doesn't want Texans to have to choose between Cowboys and Texans. So the noon starts, we're actually pretty good at them.
Yeah, that's true. And also, before we close the schedule out, we got to mention the last game in Tennessee for the Titans. No day or time is listed on that one. If they need that one, if the Texans need to win it, they're going to have a few extra days of prep coming off the Christmas game, which will help. They'll need the rest after those 3 tough games back to back in 10 days. And I mostly feel good about the early season schedule stuff, but they better rack up some wins because it's a gauntlet at the end. There are Lions, Cowboys, Dolphins, Chiefs, and Ravens, all in the final 7 games.
Well, and just to clarify it to some of the people that may not have been paying attention to this, that final game is to be determined for when exactly it is, because they want to increase the suspense of like, okay, if this team needs one game and this other team, it doesn't matter. So they try to load the games up so that games are all relevant that very last weekend. And they usually put a lot of these kinds of divisional matchups late in the season like this because they want people to care.
As a fan, what do you like? Do you like noon games, 3:00 games, Sunday primetime, Monday? Like, what are your favorites? What do you lean towards, and what don't you like? Which ones don't you like?
Well, I definitely I like the noon starts, because I have to tell you, as much like Sunday nights when the team is really relevant is the best feeling. Like, you just have to make sure that your Monday doesn't have too much stuff, but it means that, you don't have to take off work and you can spend your whole day doing your things. And usually people show up as soon as those lots open. By the time that the game starts, the stadium looks beautiful at night. They light it up all pretty. I like that. I really like the noon starts typically because, as you might suspect, I get really hyped up for evening games and I have a hard time falling asleep afterwards because it's a lot of energy if the game's good. So,
oh yeah, no, I agree with you there for sure.
so yeah, I'm fine with the noon starts. And I'm also fine because you don't want a situation where in parts of Texas they can't watch the game because a local affiliate has to choose between Cowboys and Texans and make certain choices. So when they stack them noon 3, that's fine by me because that suits the most people living in Texas. So I'm good with that.
And with all these national games and CJ Stroud, this is a great season, Steph. If they play well, if they do well in these games, this could help gain a national following for the Texans potentially with Stroud.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, it's the whole team really. Like, they are a really fun team to root for. Like, D'Amico Ryans is just a very impressive person. CJ Stroud, you see how he conducts himself. He's very charismatic. And the most important part is he's a professional ball deliverer. Like, the key thing is you don't want a part of the season like where somebody gets an injury at a terrible time. And then, during this 3-game stretch from the Jets to the Cowboys, people are grousing because the Texans don't have, enough ammunition to compete. Like, really all you need to be able to compete each week. And frankly, the next step after that is you need to dominate other teams so that the refs or weird ball bounces or whatever don't steal games from you. Like, so if you put it on teams pretty good, that takes some of the elements of chance out. And so this is going to be a huge challenge season. You have a first place schedule. You're playing the projected 4th hardest schedule in the league. This is going to be a test of maturity, but they have put together a roster and have a mindset where they want to feel up to that challenge. And I'm interested to see what this is going to be. Like, this is the best reality programming in the world, and you can see this going all different kinds of ways. But this is a monster season, and really, the fan base has to bring it. Like, they're going to need every bit of help that they can get for this season. And you could see the difference, like, for the home playoff game, that game was loud, and it was loud at the right times, and you could hear it through the radio or the TV broadcast. And CJ Stroud mentioned it, compared to earlier in the season. Now the fans have seen what is possible, and now the fans need to bring it. So, like, my expectations for the season is I want to see all the tailgates bumping out of control. And then we end up not out of control, but fun, big fun. I've seen some big fun in the tailgates like you would not believe. And then get in that stadium and be loud when they're on defense and quiet when they're on offense. Like, I want it to be the kind of quiet that Peyton Manning demanded when he was at his peak, where he could just conduct the offense. Like, they need every bit of help, because I remember the last couple seasons, I know the David Culley, Lovie Smith years were kind of rough, but those teams really tried hard. And I could see so many situations that if there was an actual home field advantage, the team, might have had more of a chance. And this is a team where every single competitive edge needs to be brought to bear, because they have a huge task in front of them. And I am so excited to see it, because, to be the best, you got to beat the best.
Let us know what you think of the schedule. You're out there watching us on YouTube or listening. I want to hear from you guys. And Steph, is there anything that you've heard that they're going to do new as far as the fan experience for the game? Anything new that they're adding to NRG? Is it too early to know what's going to happen this year?
It's too early for most stuff, but one of the things I want to mention is something that I hope they change their mind about. And I don't know if you guys know about it, but Deep Steel Thunder, it used to be called the Bullpen Pep Band, has been entertaining fans throughout tailgates since before the beginning of the franchise. The decision has been made that the brass part of Deep Steel Thunder is going to be disbanded. And so there's not going to be tubas and trombones and baritones and trumpets anymore. It's just going to be an extended drum line, which is fine for some purposes, but, can't be the bulls without the horns. And also, a lot of the tailgate experience was them playing special songs for different tailgates. And that's something that's going to go away. And people have feelings about that. There is a petition online that I would urge people to find. Just type in Deep Steel Thunder Brass, or I think they have a hashtag for it, and let people know, because I know for a fact the Houston Texans are very interested in giving people the best fan experience that they want. I'm not sure that they really understand the depth of meaning of what that means out in the tailgates, where people play happy birthday for people, or they give instruments to little kids and they play along with the songs. And when you have just a drum line, you're not having songs. That's one thing. And then I would like to also urge people that if you haven't done the tailgate experience, this might be the season to do it. When it gets closer to the game, I will put things about how to find my tailgate. If you have any questions about like how to tailgate or where to go, I just want to help, because this fan base has done so many things to enrich my life, and the team itself has done so many things to enrich my life. I just want to pass it on, and that's just a very Texan way to do things.
All right, fantastic stuff. And just want to remind all of our new viewers and new listeners, if you haven't seen us before, I'm going to put at the end of this one on YouTube, you're going to see links pop up as I do after every show. And I will have on there some videos that I've done in the last 2 or 3 months with a draft expert, with people that have covered there's another draft show that I did where I talked to all the people that covered some of the different draft picks. Also a show that I did on all the additions, the big additions in free agency, and the guys that covered those players, to tell you a little bit about that. So keep an eye out for that. But Steph, great stuff. You want to add anything else or mention what you're doing on cron.com?
I don't have anything popping up soon, but my pinned tweet is what I mentioned earlier, which is I talked to everybody who's ever been to the Hall of Fame that I know and said, hey, what is this whole experience about? And, I hear sometimes people like, well, the Hall of Fame itself is not that big. They have a week of events that are special, and I talk about some of those events. And frankly, end of July, early August in Houston is not the best place to be. So why not go to Cleveland, check out the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And then the distances around Canton are not that big. So, you don't have to stay in Canton proper if you can't afford that. There's all sorts of small towns around that area, and Amish country and the whole 9 yards. So I have all of that information in my pinned tweet that is from cron.com. And frankly, a lot of the stuff that is primed this season is in my archives of what I wrote last July about this team has a lot of the elements that you want to see in winning football. And we saw it come to fruition, and I can't wait to see it. But thank you for having me on.
At Steph Stradley, you know how to get in contact with her and follow everything that she's doing over there on X, and just great stuff all the way around, and can't wait for the season to start. Steph, go Texans.
Let's go.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.